Thank you all for joining us. We have Sue Ellen Christian, who is the 2022 Presidential Innovation Professor in Communication at Western Michigan University. She is the author of Overcoming Bias, A Journalist's Guide to Culture and Context, and Everyday Media Literacy, an Analog Guide to Your Digital Life. We have that book here at Peter White. A former award-winning staff writer for the Chicago Tribune, Christian is the recipient of many teaching awards, including the 2016 Michigan Professor of the Year. She teaches courses in multimedia journalism and media literacy and news media literacy at Western Michigan University. She is the creator and curator of a full exhibition at the Kalamazoo Valley Museum entitled Wonder Media, Ask the Questions, a 14-element interactive exhibition at the museum from spring 2021 to the end of 2023. She is the project co-lead on an Institute of Museum and Library Services grant to bring Wonder Media to public libraries throughout Michigan in 2024. Please join me in welcoming Sue Ellen Christian.
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you so much to the Peter White Library for inviting me to speak. The title of my presentation, Using Media Literacy to Navigate the Promise and Perils of AI. Hear a little bit of news that sounds familiar to all of you.
Blurring the line between real and make-believe. In the past few weeks, fake images of former President Donald Trump scuffling with police went viral. So did an imagined picture of Pope Francis wearing a stylish puffy coat and a fake song using cloned voices of pop stars Drake and The Weeknd.
Complete with fake news reports.
This morning, an emboldened China invades Taiwan. Financial markets are in free fall as 500...
Technology has wide-ranging abilities, including speech recognition, decision-making, and language translation. Humans essentially feed data to an algorithm, and AI processes, learns, and makes predictions.
So this is the state of our information ecosphere today, and it's why we're here this evening. What's the impact of AI on our daily lives, on our elections, and on our society? We're worried, and we should be. Artificial intelligence describes computer systems that perform tasks that normally require human intelligence, such as speech and decision-making. Misinformation and disinformation are two terms we're going to be talking about tonight, and you see them in those headlines too on the screen. Misinformation is false or inaccurate information, getting the facts wrong. Disinformation is false information that's deliberately and intentionally created to mislead. So we're looking now at creating video from text. The newest technology to enter our information system is called Sora, which is a text-to-video creation model. This prompt, which you see here, asks to create a video of an SUV traveling swiftly on a dirt road, but it has a lot more detail, as you see here in the prompt. So I'm going to talk while this video plays. The Sora model produces a moving image with lifelike details. And you can appreciate the implications of this technology for mis and disinformation. OpenAI, the creator of this software, which also brought us, by the way, ChatGPT, has not released it to the public. It's building in markers to identify the videos as AI and not real. The goal of the technology is to train AI models that help people solve problems that require real-world interaction and not contribute to the chaos of false and misleading information. But I think you can appreciate with alacrity with which that video is created just by that prompt. We are in some real new territory. So where does this leave us at this point in history? How do we navigate this new terrain? Our first job is to stop, appreciate, and take measure of what we all possess that is driving this media frenzy, our attention. We're living in an attention economy. That means attention is in short supply and always in demand. Herbert Simon was an American economist, a political scientist, and a cognitive psychologist. And way back in 1971, he said this: in an information-rich world, the wealth of information means a dearth of something else, a scarcity of whatever it is that information consumes. What information consumes is rather obvious. It consumes the attention of its recipients. I hope this makes you feel better. Because if you feel distracted and unable to keep up with the news feed, this is why. Particularly important when we think about attention is how we parse our daily allotment of it. Attention is not infinite. We have to pick and choose each day what we're going to give our attention to. We need to choose wisely, because what we have clicked on and shared and commented on and reposted in the past is what we are going to get more of. That's because of algorithms. An algorithm drives your feed. It's a formula that solves a problem. Think of it like a recipe. A recipe, what do I do with flour, vanilla, sugar, butter? I make cookies. That's an algorithm. The problem of what to serve you on Netflix or what to put in your news feed, that's a problem that is also decided by an algorithm. This is why we need to vary our media diets. If we consume multiple sources of information, we don't get placed in a narrow algorithm that becomes more and more extreme. By the way, there is legislation being discussed to require social media platforms to be more transparent and about algorithms, but right now it's not looking like it'll see the light of day. Today's technology allows both useful and harmful information to flourish. And among the harmful forms of information are conspiracies. We probably all know at least one person who believes a conspiracy theory. A vast percentage of folks at one time or another have believed a conspiracy theory. And the theories are so resilient because you cannot disprove them. Their hallmark is secrecy, and as such, key information is only available to a chosen few. In this age, in which our attention is constantly being pulled in different directions, conspiracy theories take hold because we don't have the bandwidth to stop and consider their inconsistencies and their lack of evidence. We just share it because it seems outrageous or funny, or it angers us. A third concern in terms of AI and attacks on honest information are deepfakes, which are videos that have been manipulated in either simple or complex ways to distort or completely manufacture what someone said or did. They can be quite sophisticated. One thing to look for in deepfakes, if you're not sure if that's what you're looking at, look for eyes, ears, glasses, earrings that don't match up. And you can appreciate, having seen the Sora demo video, the importance of clearly labeling content as manufactured reality to avoid serious confusion among voters and citizens. The last point I'd like to make on this slide is that against this backdrop of quickly evolving technology and a distracted public, that's us, is this phenomenon called the liar's dividend, and it is flourishing. The liar's dividend is used often by dishonest actors, elected officials, or candidates when they get caught doing something unsavory. They claim it's fake information, made up to make them look bad. The liar's dividend works because there is so much information uncertainty, and it's easy to dodge accountability by saying the charges are simply more fake information. And so in comes the cavalry with media literacy. It's a daily set of tools and critical questions that can help us see our way through this time. Media literacy is the ability to access, analyze, evaluate, and create media in a variety of forms. A subset or a sibling of media literacy is news media literacy, which is focused on news and information. We'll also talk about that tonight. The key concepts of media literacy are useful for all messages. It helps to think about all messages being constructed for a purpose, and they're constructed to get our attention with a creative language. I'm sure you've been to a movie with somebody and you walked out of the movie when we went to movies instead of in our homes and said, boy, I love that movie. And your colleague said, I hated that movie. That's a great example of different people experience the same media message differently. We're seeing that now with political speeches, with major news stories, that people interpret it differently. They understand the same information differently. Media have embedded embedded values and points of view that are communicated through the language of visuals, whether it's images or video, sounds, text. And most messages are organized to gain profit or power. And by the way, that can be a good thing. It can be power for good. It can be power to get up people to encourage them to go vote. So it doesn't have to be bad, but most media messages do have at their center, at their purpose, to somehow gain an advantage. Now that I briefly established the problem of mis and disinformation and overinformation that we as a society are facing, and having outlined what media literacy is, I'd like to take the rest of our time to explore how to apply media literacy to our daily information intake. It's both a way of thinking critically and intentionally, and a way of problem solving using technology. This slide gets at the first part of media literacy, which is cultivating intentional, critical thinking on the fly. When you're looking specifically at news and information, use this quick tip. Studies show that negative news that makes people angry is shared more often than any other kind of content, which is why number 3 is count to 10 before sharing. Just pause. You can always share it later, but give yourself time to process it and not have an emotional reaction. Counting down, number 2, count the emotional words, particularly in the headline. Clickbait headlines are famous for this, but so are heavily biased news outlets on either side of the spectrum. And that is, they're kind of hyperbolic, and they often have words meant to incite us, upset us, anger us. So if you see those words, that's another good tip that you ought to stop and consider what you're looking at. And if you only have just a second, just scan the post, the article, the information for who is the source of the information and how many sources are actually listed. The more sources, the better, and the more diverse sources, the better. This slide gets us deeper into specific skills we can use as we move through our social media feeds and news and information sites online. I invite you to take a photo of your screen to keep these tips on your smartphone and handy. Some of these tips are self-explanatory, but I'd like to point out 2 in particular. Number 5, check the website. What do reputable sources off the site say about it? Don't search a site's about page for its credibility. It's like asking someone's mother if their kids are well behaved. Instead, seek out other sources of information and what they say about the site, or if they have the same breaking news as the site that you're trying to analyze. It's called lateral reading, and it's a really great habit. Number 6 is the other thing I wanted to shout out. Check your biases. Do you believe this because you agree with it? It's asking us to have a very high level of self-awareness. But studies show that even being aware that something called the confirmation bias exists can help us to be more wary about information that we're very excited about, want to share, want to repost, retweet, talk about, because we believe it so much. So the confirmation bias asks us, it can encourage us to believe things that we agree with that might not be fully correct. Once again, pausing and being intentional about our media use can go a long way to helping us to curb inadvertently sharing dis and misinformation. This is another useful slide to take a photo of if you're so inclined to keep it on hand when you need help discerning the facts from the fakes. I'll walk through it all except for the last item, which is simply to just cut and paste the URL of a video into Amnesty International's YouTube data viewer search, and it will show you the origins of the particular video. But let's take a minute, next slide, please, and talk about the other elements of how to spot mis and disinformation. One of the tools is to access multiple outlets from multiple viewpoints. And there's a couple I'd like to lift up to your attention if you haven't already found them. One is called All Sides. It offers left, center, and right coverage on national stories. It's a useful tool to encourage us to read broadly on the key issues of the day. Another site that is also helpful is called Ground News, Ground. It's a comprehensive collection of major stories of the day with bias rankings and also sourcing included. These are both sites that you'll only see national stories on or international stories, unless your region has, for some reason, a breaking story that hits the national news. Otherwise, we're really dependent on them for local and maybe regional, as in Midwest news. Media watchdogs such as Media Bias Fact Check, Ad Fontes, and All Sides are also useful. They provide a systematic assessment of news sources to help us navigate this attention economy. These rankings aren't perfect, but they do offer a reasonable assessment based on trained evaluators, data, and blind reviewers. And they are updated every 18 months or so. So this is just an example of one news outlet, and it will qualify the sorts of sources that are used, how often they're evidence-based, and if there is an ideological bias to the news outlet or website. PolitiFact is one of several fact-checking sites that have been operating since 2007. It's owned by the nonprofit Poynter Institute for Media Studies. Another good fact-checking site is Snopes.com, as well as factcheck.org. They're popular, they're long-running, and once again, they will provide you with some neutral expert fact-checking on national stories and on comments and claims made by national figures. Some of the most difficult pieces of information to assess and some of the most convincing information are images. A picture used to be worth 1,000 words. Now a good fake picture is worth 1,000 clicks and likes. So how do we tell the difference? These are two examples. They're quite simple. They're photoshopped images meant to go viral with an attention-getting headline. In the top image, the pilot is taking a selfie from the airplane that's parked, not in the sky. And in the lower image, our would-be paleontologist / archaeologist has not unearthed a skull, but some kind of a box or piece of plastic. This image went viral. It was supposedly of National Geographic photojournalists being chased by a bear. So let's use the media literacy tip of a reverse image search, which is when we search Google for the image, or in this case, we're just going to search Google for part of the image to find out its origins. So I isolated the bear to do a reverse image search of it, thinking that chances are our National Geographic photographers, this might have been a private photo, but the bear I might have a shot at actually finding online. So just to reiterate what I said, you drag and drop the image into Google Images on a desktop computer. You can also do it on your phone. I find it easiest to actually, when using your phone for a reverse image search, to have it on desktop view. The results will tell you other appearances on the internet. It will give you visually similar images, and in some cases, it will give you a list of locations and dates in which that same image has been used online. It helps you to know if what supposedly is a current image, for example, of conflict in Ukraine, is maybe repurposed from an earlier conflict 10, 15 years ago. So, Andrea, if you would click, this will play to show the viewers how to do a reverse image search. You'll see that the reverse image search example with the bear supposedly chasing photographers in the wild. You click on the camera icon in the Google search and drag and drop your image into the search field. A list of similar images will display. An image with a long and varied history is a sure sign of a fake image. In this case, the bear is from a royalty-free photo site, and it was pasted into the original photo. We may never know what those photographers were actually running from or toward, but we do know that that bear was from a royalty-free photo site and photoshopped in. It's really easy to do a reverse search. Another tool besides Google is TinEye. It's free and will give you the same sorts of results. Not one of the tools that I just walked through is foolproof. And oftentimes we don't have the time or frankly the motivation to check out each claim that comes our way. I created this site called wondermedialibrary.com with a team of librarians from public libraries throughout Michigan, the Library of Michigan, and a colleague of mine at WMU in the libraries system. It's based on an in-person exhibition that I created that ran at the Kalamazoo Valley Museum for 21 months, during which 136,000 people visited. Spending time on this site and with other educational resources can help you develop media literacy skills that become second nature to your way of encountering information. I'd like to give you a quick tour of the site and its offerings so that you get a sense of what it's like and what you might gain from it. It's tailored for ages 10 and older, but my evaluations and assessment have shown that it is resonant for all ages, and in particular for folks who are not digital natives and who are still getting up to speed on just how to navigate themselves and their choices within our attention economy. The site is a, pardon me, a mix of both media literacy tools as well as news media literacy tools. I clicked on same message, different meaning. My background is as a reporter, and so I went and interviewed individuals in Southwest Michigan about what the American flag meant to them. I was looking at that media literacy principle of different people understand the same message differently. And in this case, certainly discovered a variety of responses from a variety of different people, and some quite unexpected in terms of their responses about what the American flag meant to them. Scrolling down to look at news literacy tools and tips, Escape the Fake is a fun game. There's 2 levels and also 2 different scenarios, helping people of all ages to navigate what comes across their phones in terms of their news feed. And it's a series of questions, and it sort of gamifies our learning with real life things that we will encounter as we're scrolling through our news feeds.
You are scrolling through your social media feed. Suddenly, you find yourself trapped due to a message of lies and deception.
Help! Here is the post of lies and deception that has entrapped you. It is designed to trick you. This game is to help you learn to identify the misinformation that you see online. Your goal is to find the truth and escape the fake.
Dramatic, isn't it? Dun, dun, dun. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the critical role of local news media in our media and information ecosphere. Democracy depends on an informed citizenry, and local journalism in particular provides something that no national outlet can: dependable daily news about where we live. Because of all this technology I've been discussing, journalism has suffered mightily. We've lost more than 2,200 newspapers across the US. And in that time, 44,000 plus journalists have been laid off. We're getting to an era now where many communities, as you'll see on the map, are what's called a news desert, meaning that there is no local news provider in that county. Without trained professional journalists who seek to get all sides of an issue and to present it in an authoritative way, and most importantly, an accurate way, residents of an area cannot govern themselves. They don't have the basic information that they need to know what's happening at the planning meeting or the city commission meeting or the school board, any number of things. I happen to be part of the Southwest Michigan Journalism Collaborative, and there are other collaboratives in Michigan. And it's a sign of the times that where former competitors are banding together to try and expand their resources and their reporting outreach for breadth and depth to be able to tell the stories of communities and keep these outlets solvent. This is a particularly telling slide, I think, because of the real world research behind it. Because we've had 20 years, 2 decades of news outlets losing money because they were flat-footed. They were not ready for digital news and information and did not pivot quickly enough, and frankly gave away their content for free. Not a great business model. So we've lost local news, and it does have real-world impacts. One of the things that a California study found was that when you have drastic cuts in staffing at local newspapers, fewer candidates run for office, and fewer people come out and vote because they don't know about the races or that there is even an election. We also see with local newspaper closures in particular that we get poorer standards of public finance. So, for example, higher deficits. Communities will take on more debt because, frankly, there's not a watchdog journalist in the audience of the in the budget meeting for the city commission, for example. Interestingly enough, members of Congress who do not have an active local newspaper or broadcast station or radio station in their district play to the national media instead. And so their constituents get less out of their elected official because of the lack of local news coverage. And once we lose our local news, people don't find another local news source. They tend to, again, according to an MIT study, become one-party voters and simplify their thinking into a national framework, as opposed to the more nuanced thinking of local elections and local issues. So my encouragement to you is to support your local news outlets, however meager they may be. I hear people say, well, our paper's so bad, whether it's online or still coming to your mailbox a couple times a week. Why would I pay for it? Well, we need them, and once they leave us, it's very difficult to reconstitute them. In most cases, news outlets are functioning on a skeleton staff. I'm super eager to hear your questions and concerns and be able to speak specifically to issues that you want to ask me about with the remainder of our time. But I do want to leave you with this last slide, which I hope will make you feel empowered and equipped with some tools and thinking skills to address the amazing and sometimes overwhelming world of media and news and information. If we only have a few minutes to respond to concerns or attacks, these are my send-offs to you. First, stick with evidence-based facts and information. So when you are looking at a post, an article, listening to a news report, listen for the source. And is this an expert source, one we can trust, and one that knows what they're talking about? We're seeing a real plethora of important sounding think tanks and different news and information outlets that are not necessarily evidence-based, which is then why we go back to that earlier slide about lateral reading. What is this, organization to protect democracy? I'm making that up, but you can Google it and read about it. Secondly, stay unemotional. As I mentioned earlier, our instinct when we either strongly agree with something or something makes us very angry and upset is to not think as clearly as we might and also share information more quickly. When you are dealing with your neighbor, your loved one, a friend who has a really different approach to understanding news and information than you, and you're really disagreeing with them about what they are believing in and what they're consuming, one helpful thing is to move from judgment to wonder. So instead of ridiculing someone or asking them how they could possibly believe something that's so outrageous, instead wonder why they think that. What makes them think that? Where might they have found that information? It's a helpful way to diffuse the situation and try to start a dialogue that's based in facts and in critical thinking. My hope for our government and tech institutions is that we are going to see more and more policy and smart process to help us as consumers. Right now, the kinds of things that I'm giving you are tips and tools that you as an individual news and information consumer can put to work this evening. But we also need help, and we deserve the help. And leaning into policy and process and thinking about ways that we can make good informed decisions as a government and as a democracy regarding transparency of funding and of authorship and purpose is incredibly helpful to all of us. And lastly, when you do encounter information that seems suspect to you or that you've verified is incorrect, think about that truth sandwich. You're going to counter with accurate information. Let someone know, here's where you can find more about it, about this issue that has a different perspective, and it's a very authoritative perspective and expert perspective. Then you can address the falsehood that a particular post might have introduced into your newsfeed, and then follow up with the truth again. So that truth sandwich is an effective way to start to debunk lies and fakes and misinformation that we're all encountering every day. Please feel free to take down my email, visit the website and leave a comment there. My book is available, I understand, at the library. I'm always eager to hear input from folks who have questions or comments too from a presentation like this. So I'll quit talking and look forward to having some Q&A.
Well, Sue, you may have already answered the question, but as you were going through all these things we can do, my reaction was, I wonder how many of us, even in this room, will actually do it. And I think that's part of the problem that you're trying to overcome, and even those of us that are concerned about it. And I do wonder, if there is something in the works to make it easier for us to find, maybe there is these various sources, but that's what concerns me, is my ability to actually pursue the kinds of things you're talking about.
Thanks. Thank you for that question and comment. I would just like to say you are not alone. And in fact, a new phrase has entered our lexicon, and that is called news avoidance. People do feel overwhelmed, as you mentioned, sir, and their response is, I'm just going to turn off from news and information. I'm not going to engage anymore. Sound familiar? For many of us, we hit a limit. And so that's indicative of a national phenomenon of just fatigue, information fatigue, and with the chaos. And my response to that is that it doesn't have to be this hard. And I do think tools, for example, like All Sides or GroundNet, are very helpful to just do the work for you. They picked, 3, 4, 5 perspectives on a major issue and offer them to you. My approach is I can't care about everything all the time. So I try and pick every day a story that really interests me or concerns me. And that's where I'm going to spend my little tiny allotment between work and family and other things. Applying some media literacy, because I really want to understand the issue, who's talking about it, whether they're an authority on it or they're a fake. So I do think there are helpful tools and like the All Sides bias and fact check, purely so we can work quickly, so that I really encourage you to just dabble, just try one thing each week. It doesn't have to be everything all at once, but they're really helpful tools so that you stay in the game, because we need critical thinkers who don't avoid the news, but are still in the mix, and frankly, helping their neighbors and friends to stay in the mix and stay informed in a credible way. I see a question from Joanna. Aside from subscribing to local journalism, what remedies or policies would reverse this long trend of diminishing local news? Right now, the New York Times is in more than one lawsuit because they have a lot of money in big name lawyers, but everybody is watching it. And that is the aggregation of news sites by, for example, Apple News. So Apple News will give you a news feed that picks from all sorts of news sites, but doesn't pay those sites for their content. They're allowed to do that because it's just bite-sized chunks. And major news providers, such as the New York Times, are saying, wait a minute, we want to get paid every single time that a news feed includes our content. You can't take it for free. So I'm hoping, and many in the news industry are hoping, that we begin to see some economic supports for, obviously, national journalism, but also local journalism could be a beneficiary of this national fight. I can't stress enough how important it is to subscribe, to donate to your local news sites. Every little bit matters, and they make a lot go a long way. In terms of remedies or policies, I've also been heartened by some local communities because they don't want to lose their local news infrastructure, are actually supporting public news and information with subsidies, with grants. There's a lot of interesting things being tried right now with nonprofit journalism. So many different models, Joanna, but there isn't one right now that is really paying the bill for all the needs.
Go ahead.
Would the gentleman at the mic like to ask me a question?
Yes, I would. I'm John Forsland. I'm with the Climate Reality Project, and a lot of the information I work with is hotly contested, of course, from a variety of angles. One of the difficulties that I have found, and my colleagues find, is that a quality, authoritative response to a conspiracy is so complex, people are not willing to read it or hear about it. And so what we wind up doing is publicizing the conspiracy. That's a nightmare for a lot of us. But thank you for your talk.
Yes, thank you. I absolutely empathize with your comment. Working on a project locally that, interestingly enough, exemplifies just what you said. I believe your name was John, and that is that we're outgunned because of the attention economy. People really so often what is real and honest and accurate is nuanced. It's complex. Digital media, this thing right here, our phones, is literally rewiring our brains to want to change content, to want something new more often. So our ability to concentrate and sustain attention, scientists are finding, is literally diminishing and we're being rewired. So in one sense, our sorts of complicated and complex responses to conspiracy theories or inaccurate information, we are, particularly for the younger generation, the digital natives, we are going to need to find more and more ways to tell stories in a way that engages folks' attention so that they do hang around to listen to the complex and important and significant realities of our time. One way that we are seeing news organizations do that is through short form video. In particular, younger adults, 40 and under, like to watch video to get their information as opposed to reading. And so we're seeing TikTok-like news and information delivered in bite-sized chunks, trying to use the medium that most communicates with the audiences that aren't going to dig into a big report or a rebuttal from a conspiracy theory. So I do think some interesting storytelling and creative ways of delivering a narrative are happening, and with some success, particularly with short form video and with infographics. Joan asks, how do you determine if the source is trusted? I think that, conspiracy theories aren't what I worry about. Those, I can check a fact-checking site, or my own sense of critical thinking, a quick review of sources. What I find is a more problematic source are those that have a mix of straightforward information, like an Associated Press news story, and then biased information that is not well sourced. And that within one news outlet can be quite disorienting. Those, Joan, are the ones that I think are particularly problematic, because the source as a whole is a mixed bag. So then I do go back to that list of check 9, and some really simple things that we can do from the get-go? Has somebody written it? And if so, can I click on their byline and see that it's a real person? Can I Google their name and find other things that they've written? The next thing I do is I just scan for sources. How many people are quoted in this article? And you'd be amazed how many poorly sourced articles there are out there that, because of that, are not very trustworthy. Another tip is to think about, again, reading laterally. So if I'm looking at a source and thinking, boy, nobody else has this story but this source, maybe it's an exclusive, but chances are some other outlet has gotten wind of whatever this story is that I'm reading about. And so I do think lateral reading, going off of a site to read about the issue, the topic, the statement, the speech, the politician, what have you, and see what others are saying and how well do these match up. I'm not saying that I'm an advocate of a bandwagon approach to covering news, or to, we certainly get frustrated with this idea that, the pack media, and they're always, basically covering the same thing and the same people. But what I am saying is looking for some, that lateral reading that lets me know if a source can be trusted, whether it's through a bias check or by looking to see if other outlets are at least covering the incident. They might be covering it differently, but then I can rest assured that it's not a made up person, place, or thing. It's difficult to determine if a source is trusted. I have to say, I really look for folks who, when they make a mistake, they say so and they correct it. And that is one hallmark of an ethical, professional journalism organization. And that is, wow, balloons just burst around me. And that is that they follow the Society of Professional Journalists Code of Ethics, which says be accountable and accuracy is everything. So when you make a mistake, say you made a mistake, correct the mistake, and let folks know that it is corrected. So be transparent.
I have a question. You said that there were
Right.
2,200 newspapers that had closed and 44,000 journalists who have lost their jobs. Do you know how many that would be in Michigan? How many newspapers have closed in Michigan, and how many journalists have been let go because of the closure of the newspaper?
Thanks for that question. It's a great question. And we are fortunate in Michigan. I can tell you that if we zoom in on the state of Michigan in the graphic that I had used in my PowerPoint, we have 3 counties with no newspapers. And they are in the upper part of the Lower Peninsula. And I think I can find it out in just a second what those 3 are. And then several counties, it looks like about a dozen, have only 1 newspaper. So they are at risk of being also a news desert county. Let me quickly search, because I know the answer is at the tip of our fingers. You can search the news desert. Yeah, sorry. I guess running Zoom, I can't get to what I need to get to. But if you search news deserts in Michigan, you'll see the detailed listing for the 2 counties in the upper Lower Peninsula, and then the 12 or so that are down to 1 newspaper. I'm sorry, I can't provide more detail right now, but it is out there. And if you want to email me, I'm happy to get you that information.
I'd like to have a follow-up on that question.
Sure.
I would like to know if you could just do a quick check on Iowa and see how many have closed in Iowa.
All right. Iowa. All right. Interesting. Well, I've got it up. Okay, here we go. Let's just quick look at Michigan because now I can get on the where I need to get. We have I'm sorry, I'm going to completely mispronounce this. Misaki County? Misaki County? That has no newspapers, and neither does Escoda, and neither does Menominee up in the UP. Every other county in the UP has one newspaper, and every other county until you get to Kent County on the on the west side of the state, then we start seeing multiple papers per county. In 2004 in Michigan, we had 48 newspapers, pardon me, and 250 weeklies, which was very common, by the way, for more rural areas, a weekly is more sustainable. In 2019, there were 46 dailies, but a drop to 174 weekly papers. So a 26% decrease between 2004 and 2019. And you mentioned about Iowa. Let's see what I can find. So Iowa has every single county in Iowa has at least one newspaper. It has 17 counties with a single newspaper. And in 2004, there were 38 daily newspapers in Iowa and 276 weekly newspapers in Iowa. And in 2019, there were 33 daily newspapers in Iowa and 229 weekly, with a decrease of 17% between those, roughly that 15 years.
So we grew up in an age of 3 networks, and the ultimate goal was truth and honesty and reporting. And people would lose their jobs if they even erroneously reported something on the network. Obviously, those days are gone, and we have CNN on one side and Fox on the other. And it's hard to get news where someone isn't trying to shape your opinion rather than just give you the news. What are the good sources? And you had mentioned AP being a source that is credible. But what are the good sources? And do you look outside of the United States to a BBC or a CBC to get fair reporting on what's happening in the United States that isn't tainted or making an effort to manipulate us?
Great question. I have a few things I'd like to respond to regarding that. One, as a former journalist, I would say the vast majority of journalists are really trying to get it right and to deliver the information accurately, on time, and in a fair and balanced way. I really believe that. And having been around news outlets my entire adult career, I see it in action. Now, one of the issues that we're facing is and you'll see it on my website, wondermedialibrary.com. If you look under the business of media, we have a shrinking of the number of owners of news and information purveyors in the United States. And so, for example, Sinclair Media owns a lot of local broadcast stations, and they have a particular angle and bent that they want their employees to pursue in terms of tone, style. They also, many owners will also provide sort of stock coverage of like a media, pardon me, like a medical issue, something that about diabetes or something that's sort of an all-purpose evergreen story that all of their outlets can use because all of their outlets are struggling because they're local news outlets. So I just want to put in a, I just want to champion how many good, honest journalists there are who are, I do think, putting out good information. I do agree that particularly cable news is very, they're after the ratings. And we live in a capitalist society. And because of that, news organizations are for profit. The majority of them are. And so that's why I include that slide on the attention economy. What you want more of is what you should watch. And so if you don't appreciate the divisive nature of certain broadcasters, don't watch them. I myself am a huge fan of public media. So PBS, Frontline, I think that their mission is based in the legislation that funds them with taxpayer money, is to be culturally and educationally relevant and to try and lift up the voices of stories that are not told by for-profit media. So that is one source in terms of broadcast news that I think is solid and dependable. Associated Press is the sort of, they're a very dependable, highly ethical and evidence-based reporting organization. I also like Reuters, Reuters, which has offices in the US but is based in England. You mentioned the BBC. I think they provide excellent coverage, as does The Guardian, which is also based in England. So I share your reflection that sometimes having news outlets that are external to our national scene can provide the most measured and really sort of calm approach to different things that are happening, and especially the national sphere. I hope I answered your question. I was trying to think. You have brought up many good points. Email me if I forgot something, but I tend to lean into Reuters. I read really widely. I do think like The Economist. I think reading places that you and consuming news and information from a variety of sources is probably our best bet. I do love the BBC as well. Yes.
I have another question. I didn't hear you mention C-SPAN 1, 2, or 3. Do you ever watch those channels?
Well, C-SPAN, I think of, thanks for that question. That's just, I don't think of it as a news outlet in the sense of that they aren't synopsizing, summarizing, and culling through the news and events of the day for me to save me time. And so I think of C-SPAN as, pardon me, real-time coverage of a hearing, which is great. It's a primary source. It's a primary, document and a primary source for really important hearings and other things like that. So we haven't even talked about the importance of, not secondary and secondhand news, but going to the actual event. But I have to admit, like most people, watching C-SPAN most days is like watching paint dry. So I depend on news outlets to pick the most important things for me. And, that's part of the agenda setting function of the media, for good or bad, in our busy lives. What news outlets do is determine what they think is most important to us. And again, I want to emphasize the importance of many consumers working together. So the reason the boycotts work, a consumer boycott works, is because even though we're all just one little person against a multi-million-dollar company, if people decide that they don't trust a news source anymore and turn away from it, it has an impact if enough people do it. So this is why I proselytize about media literacy and news literacy. So to empower us to be critical consumers in and of ourselves, because we are up against some pretty major media behemoths in terms of news and information. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. I'd like to remind everybody here that Google is not the only search engine, and if you continue to use it, you are going to be compartmentalized. So make sure you clear your cache, clear your cookies. You're going to lose some of the functionality, but it's good to use 3 or 4 different search engines and keep away from being siloized. The second point is that a quick and dirty way to evaluate is consider who is creating the content, who is sharing or amplifying the content, and then who does the content affect. So if it's an issue about the southern border, just think of, who is in all those 3 buckets. If it's about climate, who is in those 3 buckets of what it is. The other point that I wanted to make is that for the past 10 years or so, there's been the FLIC acronym for combating science misinformation, fake experts, logical fallacies, incomplete information, conspiracy theories, and so forth. So it's a very interesting technique that's been used for years to combat science, climate, and so forth denial. But it's a very interesting presentation. Thank you very much. I'll check out your site.
Thank you. And thank you so much for lifting up I like Bing. Bing is a great search engine, and it also doesn't track you in the same way that Google does. Thank you for the reminder to clear your cache. So your history, while it might be a little inconvenient, as you note, we could have a whole separate discussion about privacy and the various things that you can do on your smartphone to preserve your data so that you're not sharing it with companies inadvertently. There's a lot of good tools out there. They are in my book if you just want to look at the privacy chapter. I try and give lots of good tips like that. And you mentioned the FLIC test. There is a beloved test that many librarians use called the CRAP test. It's currency, the timeliness of the information, relevance, how the information fits into your needs, authority, the source of the information, accuracy, relevancy, correctness, and then purpose, same thing, the reason the information exists and who created it, which is so often gives you the answer when we think about who created this message and why. That is another really great media literacy analysis tool that can quickly sort through the facts from the fakes. Great question and comment. Thank you.
I think we've got time for maybe one more.
So you just recently gave us a list, of good, dependable, evidence-based news, AP, Reuters, BBC, The Guardian. I was just wondering where you would rank the magazine called The Week, which publishes like maybe a whole articles from The Atlantic, The Economist, The Washington Post, The New York Times, but will give some summaries of other pieces of news. I just wondered how you would rank, say, a magazine like that. Thanks.
Right. So many people might not be familiar with it because it is it wouldn't show up in your Apple feed or things. It's a weekly, and it does give you a nice sampling also of all sides of an issue. They present news from global sources, a couple hundred, each time their edition comes out. So I do think it's another great, it's less It's not day to day, but it's certainly a good mix. And I think it's in keeping with the from what little I know of it, because I don't subscribe to it, but it tries to give us that 360-degree view of the news. I wish I could be a little bit more detailed from experience, but I'm not. It's from what I've read and picked up, and just skimming through the magazine every so often. But it hits me as the same kind of thing as allsides.com, which is it's a valuable read because it's trying to give you the full spectrum of opinion and ideas about major issues. Thank you for that question. Thank you for all the questions and being such an interested audience. It's really fun to talk with you all.
Thank you so much,
And
Sue Ellen.
it's 60 degrees here in Kalamazoo. What's the temperature there?
It was 50 earlier today. We were all walking around without jackets on.
Crazy.
Crazy. Yep. What a weird winter.
Yeah, I know.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
inviting me. Yes, I enjoyed it. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.